They get cold.
It is gonna get colder.
County has already closed offices on Friday.
Really? Good.
For us, it's
So it's gonna be freezing what on Friday? Is it Thursday to Friday?
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Thursday night.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hope it snows all this and something.
That'd be good, right?
It'd be awesome.
It's 5:00 p.m. on Monday, December 19, 2022. I call the special meeting of the Kingsville Independent School District to order. We'll have a roll call. Joe Morales here. Martin Chapa. David Garcia.
Here.
Elizabeth Ramos.
Here.
James Glusing. Here. Delma Salinas.
Here.
And Brian Kufal is here. Let the record show there is a quorum of board members present, and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with Government Code Chapter 551 of the State of Texas Open Meetings Act. We move to the moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. All right, this meeting will be live video streamed at https://bit.ly/3SROLQR. We move to item number 4, which is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Ramos. Seconded by Mr. Morales. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 6-0. Item number 5 is public participation. Do we have anyone who wishes to address the board?
No, sir, we do not.
Thank you. Item number 6 is new business. 6A is formally receive, consider, and possible action on board member resignation. Fellow trustees, I have forwarded to each of you a copy of the letter we received from Ms. Elizabeth Ramos, outlining her intent to resign from the board. At this time, I would like to move that the board formally accept that resignation. Is there a second?
I second.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Ms. Ramos. All those, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 6-0. All right, we now have a vacancy created in place 5 for the Kingsville Independent School District Board of Trustees. Item B is, along with that vacancy, we now have a vacancy as the board vice president. And at this time, I would open nominations for vice president. Guys.
I'll nominate Joey Dennis. He doesn't want it.
All right. Joe Morales has been nominated for vice president. Is there any other nomination? If not, do I hear a motion that Joe Morales be elected vice president of the Board of Trustees?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Garcia. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Salinas. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Did you abstain, Joe? Or did you vote yes? Yes. All right, motion carries 6-0. 5-0, I'm sorry. All right, item number C is discussion and possible action regarding filling a vacant position on the Kingsville ISD Board of Trustees. All right, as I've sent to each of you a copy of the policy, and we've got Pete Morales on the line regarding the legal processes that are available to us. basically it boils down to two options. One, we can hold a special election, which will, because there's not a municipality having an election this year, it would truly be a special election, cost borne entirely by us. There's a process that's set out by the Secretary of State that would go through. Frankly, the cost of that would probably be about 30,000 or more, and I'm not sure exactly when we could get that accomplished. Most likely in the April-May timeframe. The second option to us available through our legal policy is for the board to directly appoint a replacement trustee. This is the process that was followed in October, November of 2012, the last time we had a vacancy that was filled. We did have a vacancy once before when Trustee Garza was deceased, but we were within time enough for an election for it to be replaced at that way. And there was no other board action taken at that point. In October of 2012, the board sent out a application or established an application process. Anyone interested in being a board member came to the district, picked up an application, filled it out. There was a deadline for returning it, and then the board met and selected a replacement trustee from the applications that were filled. So those are basically the two options available to us. We can discuss. Ideally, I'd like to make a decision tonight as to which route we're going to take, so that we can get moving in that process. Under the Texas Constitution, the holdover policy, until a replacement trustee is actually sworn in, Mr. Ramos continues as a board member with full board authority on everything except voting for her replacement. Questions? Discussion, or I'd entertain a motion someone has.
What's the timeline if we go this route with the application?
I spoke with Mr. Maddox earlier today, and ideally what could happen, I have a copy of the questions. I don't have the actual application, but I have a copy of the questions that were submitted the last time this process took place. I believe Ms. Garza resigned in October of 2012, and by November of 2012, the replacement was seated. The time that we have discussed with Mr. Maddox is that if that's the route we choose to go, we could have an application ready by January 3rd, when our administration office is open back up. We could certainly provide press releases or something before then, noting that that's the route that we want to take, and that anyone interested could come by the administrative offices and pick up an application. We can set the time frame. I tried to figure out last time exactly what the time frame was. Mr. Maddox has suggested that if we had a 2-week time frame of filling out and returning applications, then we could actually take action at our January 17th meeting. If we feel like that is too short of a time frame, then we could either extend that time frame and call a special meeting for this specific purpose, or push it into the February meeting.
Well, my only concern with this is if we're letting people come by and pick up an application, when is the school district offices open? I mean, they're going to be closed considerably during this time.
That's what it would not be available until January the 3rd.
January 2nd.
Or 2nd would be when we opened administrative offices back up. There's no reason why, I don't think, and I'll defer to the attorney on this, but we may even be able to post, well, I don't want to say we're gonna post anything on our website because the administrative offices are closed, and I don't want anybody to have to fool with this during their Christmas party.
I personally, I know an election would be very, very costly. But I would rather go that route and let the community vote. You know, since, you know, they've done that in the past.
My preference is that we go through the application process. That's the way it was done last. And I think we would encompass anybody who had the desire to run. This is kind of an interim replacement. They will be in office until May of 2024, when the election was held.
Now, like Ms. Lena said on the election, what if we went that route, what would be the timeline on something like that?
It's specified by statute. I think what would have to happen would, we would get Mr. Pitts involved. We would have to have a meeting to declare an election. There's a very specific time frame that is specified in the statute. My guess is that we could not call an election prior to probably the May timeframe. If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion that we pursue a replacement director through the appointment process following applications to be submitted by interested parties. Is there a second? Second. Motion made by Mr. Kupal, seconded by Mr. Gluson. Any further discussion?
I hear Mrs. Salinas' concern, but for the sake of saving some money. And then also, we got a lot of things we gotta get ready for the new year, and to put that on election within the schedule, I just think we take away from what we need to accomplish here. So I just want to say that Ms. Salinas.
Well,
Can you all hear me?
well,
Board President, can you all hear me?
yes, sir.
So when it comes to the appointment process, remember, board, you all will have the ability to create your own specifications or requirements in addition to the requirements that are already in place under policy. And you all will have the ability to question and interview the applicants in closed session to make your own judgment as to whether or not you would want to appoint certain individuals. And then because it's going to be on a board agenda to have this application interview process, the public can show up to make comments that day if anybody was interested in making comments the day that you all decide to put it on your agenda to have a closed session interview process. So I understand the concern with getting the public involved and allowing them the opportunity to voice their concerns. And that could also happen at the board meeting. It's not necessarily something so simple as just appointing anybody. You all will have the opportunity to question them, create your specifications. And if you all decided to do that, we would definitely have a discussion for you all to create those qualifications that you require. So I don't know if there's any other questions along the lines of the process, but I just wanted to give everybody the peace of mind to know that you will have an opportunity to question and interview any individuals that you appoint. And they will serve the rest of the term until 2024. Because if you have an election, anybody that wants to run for that election will have to run knowing they only have 2 years left. So it might even be tough to get candidates that want to run for only 2-year term.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, there's a motion on the floor that the board move
Well, I am concerned, nobody has set a date of when we, if we do this, when would the taking in the paperwork,
We'll follow that in just a minute. All right. There's a motion to fill by appointment following an application process for the replacement KISD board trustee to fill place 5. Motion was made by Mr. Cooper, seconded by Mr. Glusing. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? All right, motion carries 4-1. The next piece of business would be then to discuss the specifications and kind of a timeline. And some of this is kind of up in the air. Personally, I don't think we need to stray from just the basic legal requirements as established by law for a board member. I don't think we should add any qualifications to that. If someone is eligible to run and hold this office, I think that should be sufficient for us to allow them to apply to this office. Having said that, I also would like to see us adopt, and if we need to take a minute or two, I think this last application was pretty broad in terms of the questions that ask. I think it could give us a good feel for the individual candidates. The last time in 2012, there were not interviews held with the candidates. It was done specifically on the application process, but we don't have to make that decision tonight. What would be the ideal situation would be for us we have determined that this is the route we were going to take. If we were to adopt this application tonight, we could make sure it be ready and available by January 2nd. We don't have a planned meeting between now and we don't even have one planned for the 3rd. I think at this point, we are looking potentially at January the 10th for a potential workshop, followed up on January the 17th with our regular scheduled meeting. So I'll open it up to discussion in terms of any problems or issues with this specific application. This is what was used the last time this a position was filled by appointment. Yeah. In fell the role we feel. And this would obviously be expanded into an application type format.
On number 14, Mr. President, I just wonder if it's just a question that if they decide not to run for election 2024, would that be something that somebody could hold against that person that might be seeking to fill just a term?
And I think that would be a consideration for us, either plus or minus. It might be a plus to some board members, and it might be a minus to others. It was on that last application, and so I'm not saying it should or shouldn't, but it generally. I guess it could give us as board members a feel for, is this a short time or is this a long time? Regardless of whether that's a
I guess if we have the last two.
5.
my situation is, you have now given us both directions you want to go. One of them is limited to exactly what is required by law. And this is more than is required by law. I mean, so which one,
What is?
What is required?
the application is required. You said you want to limit it to only what is required by the state to hold the position.
Right.
Well, but this one is not required by the state. So
An
now
application, no, this application is simply to help us make our selection.
I understand what you said 10 minutes ago.
No. The attorney was saying that we could create additional requirements other than those required by law to specify what it is we're looking
Okay,
for.
okay, gotcha.
And all I'm saying is that I don't want to go down that route for a number of reasons. One, I don't want it to look like we're cherry picking or not including anybody who by law could run for this office. And secondly, that's gonna slow down our process, it require another meeting for us to come up with those specific requirements. And I don't think there's anything wrong with you in your mind having a specific criteria. I don't think it needs to be discussed or be board wide, but each of us in reviewing these will have our own opinion of what we think a trustee should be.
No, I just want to make sure that I understood the difference.
Now, would we, is this gonna be scored in any way? Or
Just by us, what would happen would be, these would be received by the district. We would then disseminate those directly to each director, each trustee prior to our meeting, so that you had time to review them on your own. In the prior process, the number of applications that were picked up was disclosed to the public. The names of the individuals were not disclosed until that night a decision was made. If we wanted to hold an interview process, then it would slow it down a bit, but it was something that we could work into there. Even with an interview process, I think we probably could get the process completed by early February. Having said all of that, is there a feel for how long you think an application needs to be available? Is 2 weeks enough time for someone to pick up and fill out an application? Especially if we hit the press now saying they will be available on January the 2nd.
And then it would probably close on the 13th.
Yeah. All right, then I'm going to make a motion that we proceed with the application that has been shared, including the information that has been shared with you tonight. That we create this application with this information, have it available to the public by January the 2nd. Receive applications for 2 weeks. And then convene as a board to possibly take action either directly on the applications or establishing interviews, whichever route we choose to go at that time. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's made by Mr. Kufal, seconded by Mr. Morales. Any further discussion? All right, there's a motion on the floor to use the application questions disseminated tonight to the board. The same questions that were used in 2012. To have an application ready for pickup by January the 2nd at the administrative offices. To hold the application process open until closing it on January the, say, 13th?
13th.
Friday the 13th. And then take further action based on those applications received, potentially at the January 17th meeting. That's the motion that's on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-1. Ladies and gentlemen, there being no further actions and no further business to come before this board, do I hear a motion to adjourn? So, motion made by Mr. Morales. Nobody wants to.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Bluesing. All those in favor say aye. Motion carries 6-0. We are adjourning this special meeting at 5:25 p.m.
Thank you for having me, board. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
I do.